Happy Saturday, Risers. We hope you are having a phenomenal and a restful weekend. Sagar and I are back with some of our favorite moments from the week. Every election cycle, we learn something brand new. This week, we had some great guests weigh in on voter turnout.
That's right. Former senior advisor for the Sanders campaign, Chuck Rocha, he explained why the Latino turnout differed from Florida to Arizona to Texas. Here's what he had to say.
There was no money spent by Donald Trump down there, and there was no money spent by the Biden campaign. And what you have is Latinos in the Valley who knew Hillary Clinton. And this is an unknown a lot as much as Hillary underperformed with white working class. She overperformed in Texas with Latinos. That's why her numbers were better than Barack Obama, because they knew Bill Clinton. Anybody who's been in the Valley knows that Latinos knows Bill Clinton, and they had done work down there to build their name. They never knew really who Joe Biden was. And because there was no money spent there to say, this is who he is, here's what he can do for you, they just went to a known quantity. And that's exactly why you saw when there's no resources spent, you'll see a dramatic difference. You take that and what we just talked about in Florida, and then compare that to Arizona, where there was a ton of money, infrastructure on the ground, community-based organizations, then you get 71% of the Latino vote. It's just so unique to see how we are not a monolith last night, but in dramatic terms.
And, you know, to add on to that, I was just looking at the numbers this morning out of Pennsylvania. The Latino vote there also was really strong for Joe Biden. So it was like very state by state.
Yeah.
And it, again, I mean, this isn't rocket science. If you actually communicate with people, if you take them seriously, take their concerns seriously, and make a case, you can succeed. One of the things that was interesting about the vote numbers is the raw vote numbers. Joe Biden actually performed the same as Hillary, like got the same level of vote in the Latino community in those Texas communities and also in the Florida communities. It's just that all of the surge and all of the new voters basically went to Donald Trump.
No, exactly. It's kind of incredible. I'm literally looking at a map right now in Texas, and as somebody from the state, I can't believe it. It just defies but I mean, it can. It validates things that we talk about here all the time. You know what's also fascinating? Rhode Island and Massachusetts. In urban communities in Massachusetts, Trump dramatically outperformed where he did in 2016. And you know who they were amongst? Like Latino voters in the city in Massachusetts, all across the urban parts of the state. It's just, once again, these are narratives, sub-narratives and others that people are just not understanding.
And I love that those narratives are getting destroyed.
Yeah, I know. I love
if there's
it too.
even like I don't want to delude myself into thinking that anyone's going to learn anything, but it is satisfying to see. You can't take people for granted, and I like to see that.
Yeah, absolutely.
We were also joined by national affairs correspondent for The Nation, John Nichols. Here's what he said Democrats got wrong and how future candidates can connect with voters in the industrial Midwest.
The bottom line here is they completely missed the fact that when Trump talks to you, he often tells you what he's going to do. And he made it very clear that he had a strategy to mobilize his voters at the end and get them to come to the polls. He worked it with everything he had. He was literally doing rallies in Wisconsin and Michigan after nightfall on Monday night. And so he knew where he was pulling his people out. The Democrats should have anticipated that much more. But the bottom line is a much deeper reality. The fact of the matter is that Florida, as an example, a state where Joe Biden lost early, and it was one of the hard hits that Democrats took last night. Florida last night voted for a $15 minimum wage in a referendum. And so the policy wins, but the candidate who soft pedals the policy loses. And the truth of the matter is, if you want to connect in the industrial Midwest, you have to have a traditional pro-labor, pro-working class message that crosses all racial groups, that crosses all ethnic groups, and that delivers a core signal that if you are elected, people's wages will rise and they will have justice on the job and in their communities. This is not hard to figure out, but the fact is that 30 years of neoliberalism have taken from the Democratic Party some of the basic skills for winning in places like this.
John puts it so well. I mean, Democrats have leaned into cultural liberalism and away from those labor, wage, healthcare, bread and butter issues. I mean, even Joe Biden, who has this very standard issue, American political rhetoric, and he said, no, I don't want to defund the police, all this stuff. But what was his campaign ultimately? It was this like very norms and guardrails, mean tweets, and restore the soul of the nation, which is tailor-made to land with an affluent suburban audience. And that's exactly who it did land with. So I think John's conception of where the party needs to go if they're going to regain their mantle as the party of the working class is spot on.
Yeah, I know. I think he's right. I think it's a lesson for anybody who wants to talk about economic issues and more, and about just talking down to people. The whole thing about this is just, if you talk down to people, they're going to vote against you.
Yes.
It's just every single time. That is what is going to happen. And you kind of love it. That's what we love about a democracy.
Yeah. I mean, George Gale, who we had on, he's a progressive organizer in rural America. He said, look, when I show up at someone's doorstep, they may be with me on the issues. They may say right out the gates, corporate control of D.C. is the biggest problem we have, and be primed for a progressive populist message. But they don't think that Democrats even want them on the team. And you know what? They're not wrong. That's the problem. No. That's the biggest problem right there. Any issue or policy aside, no one's going to vote for you if you look at them with contempt.
No, exactly. All right, so Democrats made gains, obviously, amongst educated white voters and suburban women this election. But will the GOP change their economic orthodoxy to win a more working class crowd?
So according to Julius Krein, this is the biggest obstacle for Republicans looking to become the working class party.
The biggest obstacle, I think you hit the nail on the head, is the donor base. There's no meaningful Republican donor constituency interested in this policy realignment, in remaking the party to actually serve its core voting constituencies. And, you know, Trump, I think, in addition to whatever policy criticisms you want to make of him, he also failed, unlike what Clinton did in really remaking the Democratic policy institutions and donor base and donor institutions in the 90s. Trump really hasn't done any of that. He's carried water for the same old institutions that opposed him the whole way and have opposed this agenda the whole way. On the other hand, there's a lot of new voices coming up in the party. And I think they're a bit more interested in these issues, intellectually and more serious about the policy. And we'll see what happens in the next 4 years. But I think it's absolutely the case that that's the biggest obstacle today.
Here's the biggest problem. Right. He's totally right. And the biggest problem on economics is, Joe Biden gets in there. They're already talking full deficit hawk. Balance. It's going to be full Reaganomics and trickle down, and like all of that is going to be 100% back in fashion. So that's the biggest challenge here in terms of forging a new economic consensus.
I've almost basically written off the next 3 years. I just don't think it's going to happen in terms of any populist messaging or trying to work with Biden or whatever. I mean, maybe they shouldn't. I have no idea what it's going to look like. The question to me is that primary and the donor base and more. You're going to have some of these candidates out there who are just raking in hundreds of. They're going to have a Jeb level machine. The question is, are they going to get debased? Just like Jeb was in the primary, the presumptive nominees and more. And the billionaires will show just how out of touch, again, they are with the rest of the actual Republican elite. But that's the real question. Is there another Trump? Maybe Trump himself.
I was going to say, you think Trump's going to take another shot at it?
I don't know. Maybe he will. He would win. There's no question in my mind. I don't know if he wants to be, though. I mean,
yeah, that's the question.
Like, he loved his life before he was president. And I think that maybe he wants to return to it. Like I said, if he runs, there's not a question in my mind he would win the nomination outright. Nobody should even run against him if he does.
I think you're probably right about that. That does it for us. We're going to be back later today with the week that was in media screw-ups.
Make sure you hit that subscribe button so you don't miss any of our videos. Don't forget to like and share as well. Tomorrow, going to be back for another round of #RisingQs. We'll see you all then.
Have a great day, guys.